Good evening, everybody. I'm Stephen, and welcome to this evening's short session entitled Following in Your Footsteps, Would You Advise Your Own Children to Take Up a Career in Community Pharmacy? And we're going to do things a little bit differently this evening because the questions aren't going to be put by pharmacy contractors or even anyone working in the community pharmacy sector right now, but rather by children for whom a career in community pharmacy is at most right now a distant prospect. And our brave panel today are NPA board members Reena Barai and Nick Kaye, both themselves parents and both themselves children of pharmacists. I think second, third, or Nick's case, fourth generation community pharmacist. And I say brave because children ask questions very pointedly, bluntly, and they expect very honest answers. So without further ado, we're going to go to Eamonn, aged 8.
Hi Reena and Nick. My mum works for the National Pharmacy Association and it got me thinking, should I consider a community pharmacy as a career one day? She tells me that you both are super clever and can give me good advice.
Thank you, Eamonn. So Nick and Reena, perhaps you want to take this, Reena. So Eamonn thinks that you're both super clever and he wants to know whether he should think about a career in community pharmacy one day.
Well, Eamonn, mums never lie, so I'm going to take that compliment of being super clever. And I'm pretty sure you're very clever too, looking at all those lovely books in the back of your bookshelf as well. So I think you'd make a great community pharmacist one day. And I think, being a pharmacist and in particular being a community pharmacist is a really, really great career. It helps you to kind of combine things like science that you might enjoy at school and, being around people and helping people, which is another thing that people really look forward to in a career and want that opportunity to be able to help people. So I think it's a really good career choice for you, Eamonn, at some point.
Nick, so, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I like that, Reena, that mums never lie. I wasn't going to say about the clever, but I'll absolutely take that, and I certainly aren't going to talk against mums. I think community pharmacy is an excellent choice to think about. I think it's something that both combines a great love of people, to be able to react with people, to see people and communities grow. I think if you're in it for a lifelong journey, which is fantastic. And I think as well, it's a career that is evolving and changing. So I think it would be very wise to think of a career in community pharmacy, as I think it's going to be exciting.
Thank you, Nick and Reena, and thank you, Eamonn. So we're now going to go to Aoife, age 10. Aoife, come in.
Why would I want to work in a community pharmacy instead of a hospital or another place?
Thank you, Aoife. We can hear your voice and we can see you, not necessarily at the same time, but we've got that loud and clear. Why would Aoife want to work in a community pharmacy instead of a hospital or another setting?
So if I was saying to Aoife, although hospitals or other places are interesting places to work, what I love about being a community pharmacist, as I said earlier, is that actually being part of a community, being part of seeing people through their lives. So I've been qualified 23 years and I started stacking shelves when I was 12. And the connection that you have with the place with which you work is something I think unique to community pharmacy. And again, the day is very, very varied. So I would say a community pharmacy is a great place to use all your skills, both science-based and also communication-based, but really to be the heart of something special.
I think for me, actually, Aoife, I've worked in both. I started my career as a hospital pharmacist, which I really did enjoy, actually, and I learned a lot of different clinical specialities. But the thing I like about community pharmacy is that you build that relationship with your patient. When I worked in hospital, a patient would come in and they'd be on the ward for a little while, you'd get to know them, and then they go off and you never meet them again. Whereas in a community pharmacy, you really do get to know your patients because they're coming to you regularly, especially if you've been there for a long time. And I really like that relationship that I built with my patients in particular. And the nice thing about community pharmacy, as Nick said, is every day is different and you get to be a specialist of all things and a bit of a generalist. And that's a really, really useful kind of place to be in society because people really do rely on you as a community pharmacist.
Great answers. Thank you. Thank you, Aoife. So now we're going to hear from Mohamed, who's aged 10.
Hi, I'm 10, so it's going to be until 2035 before I can qualify the pharmacist, and maybe 2070 before I retire. Do you think pharmacy jobs and the way pharmacists provide care will be totally different 5 or 6 years from now and 50 years from now?
That's a great question. So if Mohamed became a pharmacist, he might be still doing the job till 2070-ish. So let's take the long view. Will things be very different 5 years from now and 50 plus years from now?
I think that's a really great question, Mohamed. It makes me think about 2070. I'll be 93. I hope I'm still around in my pharmacy with my walking stick. And I think about my own pharmacy. It's been around since 1930. It's always been a pharmacy. So, coming up to 90 years, it's been a place where people have gone to for medication for over 90 years. I think one of the things that won't change is that pharmacists will always care and that care that we provide will always be there. So that's one thing that won't change. But maybe the way in which we do it may change. We've got things like robotic technology coming in. We've got drones, robots that are dispensing for us now. So maybe the way that things were done, 90 years ago when the first person took over my pharmacy and they were making tablets and bottles and potions in the back of the pharmacy is going to be different. But I really do think it's a career that will evolve. And so, in 5 years' time, I can see it being very similar to now, but also nothing is constant. The one thing that is constant is change in pharmacy. And I can imagine in 50 years' time, things may look a bit different, but the care will always be there.
So I think what Reena said is really, really critical because actually, if I look at my 20-year career, if you told me when I qualified that I would have a consultation room, what on earth is one of those? I would talk to patients privately and they would tell me all sorts of things. I would be able to prescribe medication as well as dispense medication, and that I would, with my needle phobia, be sticking needles into people. I would have told you that you were completely and utterly mad. And sometimes when we're in the pharmacy business all the time, actually we don't step back and recognize how far we've come. Sometimes it can feel as if it does stay the same, but if I reflect over my 20 years of practice, my grandfather would absolutely not recognize the job I do. Projecting forward, I think maybe we could become fully circular. So, with genomics, could you get personalized medicine? Could you be 3D printing the medicine that's unique to me as an individual? Could actually the community pharmacist, knowing that person, actually come back to doing the creation of medicine and personalized medicine in the pharmacy for me as an individual, whilst also, I think, becoming more involved with diagnostic care. I think the one other thing I would really hope in 50 years now that community pharmacists are as trusted as we are now. I think we will be. I think that comes from us being part of the place with which we work and actually being, as Reena said earlier, the specialist generalist within our community. And I think that is something that's going to actually improve and cement our place within the places that we work. So I think it will be different. I agree with Reena. I think the care and that we have will be the same. I think although technology will move on, I think there will always be desire for human interaction and human contact, which I think is almost uniquely placed in community pharmacy as a deliverer of healthcare around its accessibility. And I think that is a challenge as we move forward, but I would really hope that those bits stay.
What about, if I can just jump in with my own question, independent prescribing? That's something that's coming down the track relatively soon. Well, obviously independent prescribers are already with us, but you know what I mean. Is that going to be a game changer when all pharmacists are independent prescribers?
Well, both of us are, aren't we? Nick and I are both independent prescribers, yes. Which is something, again, we never thought we'd be as pharmacists. And actually, in future years, every pharmacist that's coming out of university will be an independent prescriber. So that role for pharmacists is going to be definitely increasing and very visible to patients. And that's a really great thing for the public that use our pharmacy, so that they don't always have to go to see a doctor necessarily just to get a prescription. So that's definitely something to look out for in the future.
Sorry, yeah, I would absolutely agree with Reena. I think actually community pharmacies that are pharmacists that are IPs, actually independent prescribers actually do have the skill set to do a lot more. And I think actually it's just around now we're in a funny phase of working out what the mechanics of NHS England make that look like. But I think actually as far as skill set, as far as willingness, as far as desire from us as community pharmacists and expectation from patients will become more. I think it's something, well, I really hope is inevitable. And I think it's just for systems to work out how to use us in a slightly different way. Some of that will be electronic connections, some of that will be working out budgets, but those things are tiny things that shouldn't stand in the way of unlocking what is, you know, an accessible human service which is able to deliver great care. And I would say as well that some pharmacist colleagues I've talked to talk about independent prescribing as being something that's scary, but I will also say every single community pharmacist independently prescribes every time they recommend something to buy over the counter. It's just it's a product choice and a clinical decision making that, you know, is part of our DNA. It's just the products slightly change and the mechanics slightly change, but you know that is part of what we do day in, day out. And I really hope that systems catch up so that we can deliver something different as we evolve forward over the next 5 years.
Thank you. All of that and drones, 3D printers and Reena with a walking stick, all that's to come. So now we're going
I'm going to be 95, Stephen. I'm just, you know, maybe I'm going to go for wheelchair or drone myself, I think.
Well, who can say? Who can say? So we're now going to go and hear from James, who's 12.
Why did I choose to be a pharmacist instead of a doctor, a dentist, or another healthcare professional?
And James, you asked, why would I choose to be a pharmacist instead of a doctor or a dentist or another career in healthcare? Thanks, James.
So I'd like to answer James' questions first. So I actually did some training with a friend who was actually a dentist by trade and came back to train as a pharmacist. And you would say, well, why on earth would you do that? But actually what he hated was his appointment diary. He hated knowing in 9 months' time at 3:32, he would be taking out somebody's tooth. The one thing that I love about community pharmacy is the variation in the day. So, you know, we're not ruled by an appointment book. You don't know what's going to come in. I've been working in the pharmacy today. In fact, I'm still there now. And, you know, the things that I've seen today from a gammy toe to a dodgy eye to somebody who was really confused with their medication is the thing that I really like about it. So I say community pharmacy, specifically the variation, and actually, I would say that is unique to community pharmacy because, again, pharmacists do work in other settings like GP practice, but the variation in the day, I think, is something that I find really enjoyable in a community pharmacy.
I think for me, while they're all very credible careers and professions, I thought of being a dentist and looking in someone's mouth all day just didn't appeal to me at all. And actually, you know, my patients call me doctor. It's really quite funny because they come to me first whenever they're ill, whenever they've got a query, whenever they've got a problem, because you know, they just have to pop in. They don't need an appointment to see me. They could just turn up in my pharmacy or give me a ring and ask to speak to me. So a lot of my patients say, Reena, you're my doctor. And actually, sometimes when they've been to see a doctor, they'll come and ask my advice afterwards. Maybe they've been a bit worried to ask the doctor that question, or they haven't had enough time to sort of get the doctor to answer their queries. So actually I kind of feel like a doctor in a really strange way as a pharmacist, but I'm a bit more on a human level with patients, which I think is a really, really nice part of my job, that people treat me as an equal. As even though I'm a healthcare professional, I feel like I'm on that sort of level with the public and patients, and to me that's one of the nicest things about being a pharmacist as opposed to any of those other professions.
Stephen, can I just add on top of what Reena's just said as well, because the other thing there that Reena's said is about the trust you build. So quite often the community pharmacy becomes the one constant in primary healthcare. We know that, you know, doctors and everyone are stressed, everyone's under stress, but, you know, the comment that we get, oh, I see a different doctor every time, I've got to go through the same story every time, I see somebody different every time. And actually the community pharmacist as that constant within primary care is something that I think people, not just patients, but people value more and more. And again, they can tell you things when they trust you more and more. So I'm definitely going to come to Dr. Reena. Thank you.
So a lot about relationships there. I've heard that from many pharmacists, and pharmacy teams and I guess the community part of community pharmacy. Right, so we now go to, we have a question from Amelia in Hertfordshire. Now, Amelia was a little bit shy to actually come on and ask the question, so I'm going to read it for her. And it's for Reena. I don't know how many women pharmacy owners there are, says Amelia, but I bet it's not as many as men. Do you think it's hard as a woman to get into pharmacy ownership? And what tips would you give me? What tips would you give Amelia, Reena?
Well, great question there, Amelia. And I will always say anything a man can do, I can do too. So with that girl power statement, yes, I think you're probably right. There probably aren't as many women pharmacy owners out there, but we do exist, and there are quite a few of us. And I've got a nice little group of them actually that I've kind of collated together, and we call ourselves the Ladies Pharmacy Club, because we have a kind of very similar things in common. Obviously, we run pharmacies, but we're also mums, and we are wives and daughters, and obviously have lots of our own kind of lives as well. And we always joke that we don't only have to worry about whether we've got enough paracetamol and aspirin on the shelf in the pharmacy, we're worrying about whether there's enough bread and milk in the fridge as well. And yes, there's a lot of multitasking that happens, but you know, find me a woman that can't do that. So I would really encourage you to get into pharmacy ownership, and I'll tell you why. And the top tips I'd give you, yes, it's hard work, but actually you reap what you sow, and that's one of the nicest things. You also become the mistress of your own destiny, and you can really kind of shape things in the way you want to when you own a pharmacy, because you're the boss, you're the leader, you control how things work. And for me, that's really been something I've really enjoyed. And I think, you know, going forward with all the diversity and inclusion and all the things that are kind of happening in the future and currently, I think, you know, there's going to be that nothing will be impossible. So if that's your goal and that's your aim, please dream high and please go for it.
Thank you, Reena. Inspirational message there. And thank you, Amelia, for your question. Right, we're now going to go to Northern Ireland, and we're going to hear from Kieran, who's actually made a pharmacist out of Lego. Kieran.
Hello, my name is Kieran and I am 7. I made this Lego pharmacist, well, I tried to make this Lego pharmacist. My mum is also a pharmacist, and here's my top 3 things that I think would make a good pharmacist. 1, be kind. 2, be thoughtful. And 3, you would have to be clever. What do you think make a good pharmacist, Nick and Reena?
Thank you, Kieran. That's very good of you to come on, and what a lovely Lego pharmacist you've made. But Kieran also thinks that pharmacists should be made up of kindness, thoughtfulness, and cleverness. What do you think, Nick and Reena?
So what an absolutely wonderful video. I think that that's great. I think to be kind and thoughtful, hopefully clever as well, I think is a really good start. I once heard somebody say that a good pharmacist has to be a good person, and I think that that's something that's really lovely to hang on to. I think you do have to like people as well in a community pharmacy. You know, you have to like people, and every community pharmacist I know wants to do the best for the people they serve. I think the other thing as well, I would say you have to be sometimes is a little bit resilient, because sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. And I would say as well that the other thing for me is that you have to be a good listener. And sometimes for me, that's quite challenging, because, you know, people say about me, why use one word, Nick, when 10 will do? But actually, you've got one mouth and 2 ears. So to actually listen to what people tell you, that is really crucial. And the one thing I think we do learn as community pharmacists as well is that the start of a conversation isn't always the end of the conversation. You know, I'm reminded, just as we're speaking, about a lady who came to see me with a infected toenail, but actually ended up really bad with postnatal depression, but she just wanted an excuse to come and see me for the sore toenail. So it was just being there and accessible and letting that person talk that then gave them the right care. So it's a great start as a list. I'd like to think I was all 3, maybe not so much of the 3, but also a bit of listening and a bit of resilience, I would say.
I think you're definitely all three, Nick, definitely. What a great question, Kieran. And sometimes I wish I was made of Lego too. And actually, you know, running a pharmacy is a bit like Lego. You sort of get this big box, don't you? You've got to follow all these instructions, and sometimes a piece might go in the wrong way, and it kind of makes things not work. And so, you know, using Lego as an analogy is a really, really great idea, actually, Kieran. And your mum's a great pharmacist, by the way, as well. But, you know, the thing about Lego and the thing about working in a pharmacy is that you can build it, and you can build it to how you want it to look. You can use your imagination, and you can kind of create whatever you really want to create. And that's the nicest thing about being a community pharmacist in particular. And I think what makes a good pharmacist, and if I had Lego people, I'd love to create all these Lego team members that I could use in my pharmacy that could do all these different cool things with different add-ons that the Lego people have these days. Because one of the things that a pharmacist needs to be is a team player, because you can't do anything alone in a pharmacy. You need to have lots of people around you that you can work with, that you can talk to, that can help you, and you all kind of club together to make sure that at the end of the day the patients are happy, satisfied, and receive their medicines on time. So for me, being a team player is a really, really important thing. And just like Nick said, being a good listener, it's actually really important to be a good communicator and just being able to talk to people, because you're going to get all sorts of people walking into your pharmacy, people where English might not be their first language, people who've got learning disabilities, you know, all sorts of people, and being able to tailor your communication styles and the way you talk to people to make sure that they understand you and you've understood them is such an important skill. So great list of started for 3 there, but I think we've added a few on for you, Kieran, as well.
Thank you both, and thank you, Kieran. I think we heard from Reena there. It's all about the team as well. So maybe one day you can build a pharmacy technician and a counter assistant and a delivery driver and all the members of the pharmacy team. Brilliant from you, Kieran. Thank you. Right, we're now going to go to our friend Mohamed again. Hello, Mohamed, come in.
What's the best part about working in a pharmacy, and what's the worst part?
What's the best and the worst part? So we want warts and all. What's the best and the worst part of working in a pharmacy?
So I'll take that one first, Mohamed. Great question. I think that one of the best parts for me is I really like science at school. It was one of my favourite subjects. And actually pharmacy allows you to kind of still be a scientist, but I also really like helping people. So it kind of brings the best of both worlds. You've got the scientific brain and you've got the clinical knowledge that can really help people. So for me, that's the best thing about working in a pharmacy, the fact that I can use my knowledge that I learned at school to really support people and make people feel better. And I guess the worst thing, it's probably the worst thing with working life. You know, when you're a kid, it's so lovely and carefree, and then you grow up and you've got work and you've got responsibilities. And sometimes work can be really, really hard. And pharmacy is one of those jobs that does consume you, especially because you're patient facing and you've got, got quite a burden of responsibility on your shoulders. So probably the worst thing is that it can be really, really hard work. But no, find me a job that isn't hard work these days, and definitely the best outweighs the worst.
So I think the best thing about working in a pharmacy. So I think one of the best things about being a pharmacy owner is that, as Reena says with the Lego question, you can actually control and build what you want. I've learned through doing various things I'm not very good at having a boss. So being an owner is something that's really, really, really good. But I think the other thing as well I would say is that actually, and people might not believe me, but I actually really enjoy working in a pharmacy. It's good fun. If you've got a good team around you, that you can chat with, you can have fun with, patients and people that you get to know. We're at work for too long a time for it to be fun. So working in a pharmacy is good fun. Is ultimately, which is why I really enjoy it. I think as well, as Reena said, the other thing is with the worst thing about being working in a community pharmacy is after 23 years of standing up, sometimes my leg hurts. I'm getting a little bit old. I need to think about those types of things. But as well, I think because as well, if you go back to the question of what makes a good pharmacist, because we are caring, quite often we put maybe our patients before our family, and sometimes those things need to be redressed as we just take stock of that. So it's great fun is the best thing. Work-life balance is sometimes a bit tricky, but I'm learning to try and get that a bit better.
Well, thank you, Nick and Reena. They are all the questions that we have from our panel of children. So I want to thank you, Nick and Reena, for being very honest with your answers and frank. which is the least that they would expect. I want to thank all the kids who've taken part and all of you who are watching. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the football this evening if you're watching that, and please do join us for the rest of the NPA's conference sessions during this week. And good night all.
I was going to just say, if any
Reena, sorry.
if the kids want a job in my pharmacy when you grow up, please kind of get in touch with us. You'll all be brilliant pharmacists one day, I'm sure.
There's a great offer. On that note, good night.